Olexandr Bortnyk on the right side of your screen. And as we've now seen a couple games with Nihal, I'm starting to wonder, is that his custom mouse pad that he brought? Because I'm pretty sure the players come in with their own mouse, keyboard, but he's got me wondering, is this like a custom mouse pad as well? Nevertheless, the game is on, and the white pieces for Nihal, and kind of a King's Indian setup that Bortnyk is going for here with the black pieces, something that he's very, very familiar with. Overall, I think Nihal has been pretty satisfied with his own gameplay, although, it's not a secret to say that his time management, especially from that last game, might be called into question. So I think that's what we are focusing on here is, making sure that time is managed correctly. He's doing a great job so far. Both of these players, if they have 16 seconds, if it's anything like that first game, they're both capable of doing quite a lot with just low time on the clock. So let's see if the time actually plays a big factor in this game, or who knows, sometimes in these hotly anticipated matchups, the game kind of just fizzles out and you don't actually have the fireworks that you might expect. So let's see what the opening phase of the game brings us. Kind of waiting for the next move here. Rook takes e4. Okay, knight's coming to f6 by the looks of it. There's also this idea of e5 and c5. I mean, black kind of needs to challenge the center a little bit, but they're difficult to achieve right now. And if you play c5, you're kind of helping the fianchettoed bishop on g2 become that much stronger. And the move e5 is also not really, it just can't be played right now. And white's also likely to play bishop f4 on the next move, which is going to prevent it entirely. So I kind of expect a little bit more, a move like knight to f6 and maybe controlling the light squares. So at f6, bishop f5, and strangely, although it might seem a little outlandish right now, look out for the light squared bishop in black's position. If the bishop goes to e6, which, by the way, right now could be a very reasonable move, bishop e6. I know it's in front of the e-pawn, but maybe it has the idea to go to d5. I was going to say, look out for rook captures e6, sacrificing the exchange, because that idea is very scary to deal with. Looks like it's going to be a bit more standard here.
So I played this setup similarly against Nihal last month in London. Gave up the bishop pair, almost identical structure. He did grind me down. It was a rapid game. And seeing something very similar here. I had some chances to hold in that game, but Nihal definitely tortured me a bit. And I lost the game. But the important thing is, even from this, not equal position, but solid for black with the two bishops, he found ways to make things very tough for me to just hold and maintain, somewhat some equality. I expect bishop goes back to d2, rook a d1, but we had a very similar position, so it's bringing back maybe not the best memories. I do recall also, h4 at some point, and he made life very difficult. I've held the position in the past, but definitely some bad memories here with the long-term pressure that the bishops can provide. This is a bit different.
Yeah, I kind of expected bishop d2 in that position, retreating, and then maybe the rook can come over to d1. The bishop can even just go all the way back to c1, somewhere tucked out of the way. The bishop pair is, very strong, but usually all you need to do is just hang on to it. So I kind of expected that with maybe your idea of h4, h5 to follow. This, however, is a little bit different, but remember, if black exchanges, white takes back with the rook, there is still this h4, h5 idea, king to g2, and sometimes you can kind of oscillate between the h file, the e file, and there will be a few nice ideas here for white, but realistically, this is a position that's supposed to be very, very equal and difficult to break through.
Yeah, I mean, as more pieces get traded, white has a bit more space, and when you trade off the pieces, it makes black's job a bit easier of defense. Maybe put a queen on c7, a rook on d8. I mean, probably after h4, the natural reaction is h5, but when you play a move like h5, you have to realize you do weaken the g5 square. So sometimes white will play rook e5, and you don't want to play f6 because you weaken the e6 pawn. So h4 and h5, conclusion of that is putting more pawns on light squares, which could favor white in some sort of endgame, but also weakens the g5 squares. So they're not nothing moves. They do give a bit more space and offer some opportunities for your opponent to make a weakness or overextend. So Bortnyk's going to take some time here, but I guess Nihal defeating Indich, he knows like he's on a good path right now. He's going to try to push this, but it's not a must win. And Bortnyk is one of the more dangerous players in the event. So it's up to black to kind of prove after a few moves, like, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can hold this. It's not going to be easy for you to make progress. And typically when the person as white stops pushing this too hard is when they're at a point where in order to do that, they have to take risks. And we're not at that level yet where white has made any moves that introduce risk in the position. That could be an overextended pawn, like a pawn g4 move. That could be a pawn to c4 move at some point, which weakens d4. Those are the moves that you start to hesitate and you make the decision, do I really want to push this? But until then, Nihal might have a couple more small moves to throw in that synchronize the pieces a bit better before he's got to make a more critical decision.
Yeah, I definitely agree with the move c4. I've played this structure quite a few times with the white pieces, and I feel like the move c4 for white, pushing that pawn up, it's the move you want to do. It allows your queen to go to c3, where it lines up against the black king. You also support yourself playing d5, but still, it always comes with just that little bit of weakness because your pawn on d4 will never be secure again, right? Right now, it's defended by the c pawn on c3, and it's just not the same. And this move, however, we saw a nod of the head from Nihal, a shake of the head from Bortnyk. The evaluation just has not moved. But Eric, I think he's absolutely looking at g5 as the normal reaction. Rook takes e6, and he's very concerned after that.
He's concerned, but I don't think he can allow white to take on g6, so you just have to allow it. I don't see the win. Nihal will have at least a draw in the pocket, but he'll probably be forced if black plays g5 to take on e6, because otherwise the h5 pawn could be a weakness. Black plays g5. It's certainly something Bortnyk is going to calculate because you don't want to just be totally lost and allow rook takes e6. But if we calculate the exchange, the queen comes into g6, it takes h6, takes a lot of material, but we're talking about a rook here. So a full rook means Nihal's going to need to recoup at least a knight back to make it playable, or have some sort of like strong checkmating idea that will be extremely hard to stop.
Yeah, he's thinking here. He's actually going to take, and he must have come to the conclusion that the position wasn't something that could be saved. Like queen g6, queen takes h6, queen takes g5, rook takes e6. Who knows? He was not happy with it, and he really spent some time there. And I think the engine kind of agrees with his decision, but optically, even though you're looking at the engine evaluation and you're not really impressed, it looks like a dead even game. Look at the time, right? Nihal has got nearly 5 minutes of advantage, and look at the pawn structure in front of the king. It's been completely shattered, which is why we're seeing a more aggressive idea like the move b5. He's suddenly changing the way he's playing because he's got no time on the clock by comparison, and his king side is ruined. So he knows that even though the evaluation is saying 0.00, these players both understand that the momentum has shifted, and that h5 move by Nihal was a really impressive one and very well timed.
Yeah, it's hard to say it, but I just don't believe or agree with the computer evaluation in the sense like Bortnyk feels uncomfortable here. When you play this opening, it's not to have a weak pawn on h6 and you're missing your g-pawn. You don't play this solid structure to now have a pawn island on c6, double isolated pawns on the a file. He's doing that, yes, out of desperation, but he's not happy. And any day of the week, I'm taking white here, even if the clocks were even, because it just feels like Nihal can take pot shots against Black's king if he wants to. And if he doesn't want to in the meantime, he's got all these loose pawns to slowly attack. That could be a4, c6. Yes, Black's temporarily up that pawn, but that's because Nihal offered it at the expense of Black's pawn structure. So, the bar might be around equal, but Nihal is playing this for a win. Bortnyk is trying to hold down almost 5 minutes, and I don't think Nihal will be satisfied with anything but, great winning chances here, like extending this game as long as possible to the point where Bortnyk, with an open king, Nihal wants queens on the board, Bortnyk under a minute, and then he can play even more provocative moves because he knows Bortnyk won't even have time to react. So he just needs to keep the queens on until then. So maybe move like rook e2 here to meet queen d3 with queen c1.
Yep, agree. It's the situation that I think Nihal's opponent found himself in last game, where you just need to keep the game going. You don't need to conclude anything. You don't need to. In fact, it might be better if you didn't. Wow, look at this move. I'm wondering if it maybe comes with an idea. Looking at something like rook to g5, but I don't know if that works. And one of the reasons why I wasn't so sure about this idea is because it either works or it doesn't. And we were just kind of saying, like, you don't need to do this all-out approach, but it might just work.
It might just work, but I felt like Bortnyk has to worry about this all the time. At the same time, I don't see comfortable moves for Black, and if I do, it's going to take me some time, and Bortnyk only has 70 seconds. There are checkmate threats.
Yeah.
Nihal didn't want to play rook e2 because he wants to keep rook h1 in his pocket. So the question is here, what does Black do? I would probably be beating myself up thinking that this game is over if I was playing Black here. Which isn't a good attitude. You have to find a resource, and Bortnyk is good at that.
I have a feeling that there's a possibility that the engine is not working, because I just don't believe that it's 0.00 even now, and just that it stayed that way over the last couple moves. So my prediction is actually that when you and I felt that the position was quite good for White earlier, that it actually was a bit of an advantage, and that it might just be crushing now because it stayed at 0.00 for too long. I think it's clear, like, there's absolutely no way that this is equal. This is probably teetering on completely lost.
Yeah, no, I agree that I just couldn't believe it.
There's no way.
It doesn't even matter what we believe. We have the clocks, we have the position in front of us, and we simply don't see a hold for Bortnyk, because if he doesn't get checkmated, he's going to lose on time. And anybody would lose on time with this position. You can't play such a sharp position, expose king, queens on the board with 20, 30 seconds. We're not machines. And this is where we really aren't machines, is in situations like this.
Yeah. I think this position with everything hanging all but proves that the 0.00 is absolutely irrelevant. Let's just make sure to congratulate Nihal appropriately for that game, because if my count was correct, that was 3 brilliancies in that game. And while he was playing them, he also had an incredible lead on the clock. Rook g5, rook h1, the sacrifice at the end, icing on top. Bishop takes h7, and he's he's just taking care of business here, Eric. It's almost like it's so intimidating, right? He